I, for some reason, had like hundreds of birds outside my window. They sound really pretty, but I hope you can't hear them.
I cannot, but hey, it ties in beautifully. Conversations with nature.
Welcome to Nerdlandia.
Welcome to Nerdlandia, where we collect things because we think they're neat. I'm your host, Emily Case Buskirk, and one of the things I collect is koozies. It started off as a joke, and now I'm up to 60. It's kind of taken over my life. Anyway, today I'm talking with my friend Kate, an artist and avid collector of not only art, but driftwood and sticks. Of course, I had to ask about that. She is the founder and owner of Lionheart Canyon Studio in Omaha, and has the cutest little cattle dog named Sage Biscuit. We talk about creative community, finding inspiration in the wild, and what the American Southwest means to her. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kate. And also, thank you because being on your Creative Conversations video series is what gave me the confidence to start my own podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so excited to chat with you today. I think you were my third Patreon Creative Conversation guest, and we had such a good chat.
Yes. To kick things off for you, creating art and cultivating community just kind of go hand in hand. And your studio's name is Lionheart Canyon. Can you just describe how you got the inspiration for that name?
So I originally started my creative business in college, and it was called Kate Works. And Kate Works evolved in 2020 to Lionheart Canyon Studio. The name evolved because I wanted to create a space where I'm not just making my art, but like you said, having a creative community too. And my big dream, or whatever you want to call it, is to have an actual space in the desert called Lionheart Canyon as a retreat space for artists and creatives and humans who are curious in general to come and create together and like drink wine and whiskey and coffee under the stars while we talk in the desert. So I call my community members Lionhearts also. I just love the strength and curiosity behind that name. There's a song called The King and the Lionheart by Monsters and Men. So
yes,
it's one of my longtime favorite songs, and it stuck with me for a while. And it just, like, one day I was talking to a friend and I was like, does Lionheart Canyon Studio seem too long? And she was like, no, it's perfect. Like, that's exactly what you've been looking for.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. I was going to say, it definitely reminds me of that song. I was a huge Of Monsters and Men fan back in the day. So I've always loved that reference. And I can't wait to go out to the in-person Lionheart Canyon Studio and bring some craft beer as well, just to add to the mix.
I would expect nothing less from you.
I'm glad you brought in kind of your evolution as an artist from K-Works to Lionheart Canyon, because I've seen you dabble in a lot of different mediums, and now your primary, I would say, is textile fibers. What was it like approaching that medium, and what made you say, yeah, this is what I want to stick with?
Fiber and the weaving process started 2 years before Lionheart Canyon Studio did. So I went to Minneapolis College of Art and Design and then transferred to Hastings College, which is where I met Emily. I was a studio art major in college, and I didn't study fiber at all. I studied sculpture and illustration. So by the time I finished my thesis and my art degree and everything, I was very burned out because it's quite strenuous. The whole degree seeking in art is as degrees are. But I needed something that was creative to do with my hands, because if I'm not using my hands to create, I don't feel like I'm myself. I feel like I'm missing part of myself. So I bought myself a little weaving loom it's like Christmas 2016, I think. So I've been weaving 8 years, almost 9. No, I'm not good at math. Like just under 10 years. Yeah.
This isn't the math podcast.
Thank goodness. I would be a terrible guest. Yeah, so I'm self-taught, less than 10 years, but close to it. How about that? And I made some pieces in the beginning. I released my first collection, and then I just kept going with it. And my work is a lot better than it is, or than it was back then. But that's how you grow as an artist.
Oh, exactly. And your older pieces just still like radiate like so much warmth and creativity and your style. Even though as an artist, we're always striving for improvement, I think we also have to like embrace everything along the way. And when you're talking about, just the burnout from art school, it reminded me of this story that I've seen floating around the internet again. Like a professor supposedly told his students that they had the choice to either create the perfect ceramic piece or I think 50 crappy ones. As the story goes, the students who tried to make the perfect one just fell short, and the ones who were just creating everything that they could came up with like the coolest and most interesting pieces. And I guess I just kind of see that as a parable of two different ways to approach art, and you just cripple yourself when you are only striving for the perfection.
My friend Alex Blaze just wrote about that in her Substack too. So I can't remember if she pulled that from someone else. I've seen that too, and I love it so much.
Yeah, I saw that from there, and then it was somewhere else too. So I'm like, it's just making the rounds, and I think it's resonating with people.
Yeah, and it was a really good reminder for me because I think I put so much pressure on myself now as an artist who's further along in her career. Like I know what I'm doing technically and I'm good at it. I want to be more experimentative this year, I think. And it doesn't have to be something I share with people. You and I talked about that on our Patreon creative conversation about doing projects that are secret or just for yourself that maybe another living person never ever sees it. And
yeah,
I'm just like, I want to do more of that this year because why not?
it can be so easy to impose these like standards on yourself or these expectations. I love that you're giving yourself permission to be creative and to not always just be like making things that are going to be received by an audience or sold or something like that, because that's like so good for your artist's soul.
100%.
Speaking of inspirations, I know that the outdoors are also a huge influence on your work, including foraging sticks. I don't know if I've ever seen an artist like incorporate the outdoors in that way. So can you explain that process?
I would love to. So I'm going to talk about my thesis from my senior year of college because I spent months like foraging throughout campus and around the city of Hastings, like looking for nature elements to use in this big hanging installation. And Emily, maybe you can link the documentation video I have
Yes,
in
totally.
the show notes or something. But I've just always been so drawn to nature. Even when I was a kid, it was a huge inspiration for me. When I started weaving, I was like, I don't really want to use dowels because why use dowels when I could use sticks? I got sticks from my mom's yard. I worked as a camp counselor, so I was always looking for sticks. Like my campers would find me sticks because they knew I liked them, which was really fun. Yeah, whenever I love to travel also. And whenever I travel somewhere, I make it a point to find sticks also. So I found some really good ones on my recent journey to Arizona. So I have some native desert sticks. 2 years ago, I went on a backpacking trip in Grand Marais, Minnesota, along the north shore of Lake Superior. And Emily Wick, another weaver friend of mine, lives out there, and she took us to Artist Point in Grand Marais, which is right along the banks of Lake Superior. Both of us just foraged pieces of driftwood. And the thing I love about foraging the sticks for my work is that each stick tells a story. That's something that I might only know, or I might write about it in the listing, but all of the sticks tell a story, which I love.
That is awesome. So what makes like a good stick? What makes you say that's a stick that is going to go in some art that's going to end up on somebody's wall?
I want to say all sticks are good sticks, and they are in their own beautiful way. But my preferred sticks are, for the most part, pretty straight across. So pretty horizontal, not super wavy at all or not bendy. I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say there. But that just makes it easier to sew the top of the weaving on and also weave, because if it's too like V-shaped or something, then the weaving can start to buckle once it's been sewn on. So technically it's just better to have a straight stick. I love driftwood, so wood that's been like turned by water and then mostly doesn't have bark on it, so it's just like the inner of it. My favorite sticks though have bug patterns in it, if that makes sense. So like the bug has chewed through it, so there's like all of these cool little markings and textures. I also have a couple of beaver chewed sticks, which is really cool.
Oh my goodness.
I love those.
I love that because it seems to indicate conversation between you and nature, and you're like literally weaving it all together in your work. It's just so beautiful. And so you talked about a bunch of different regions there. What regions or even landforms would you say inspire you the most?
Definitely the desert, the American Southwest. I've been lucky enough to travel to, I think, just about 30 states throughout my life. And out of all of those, I'd say Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, even Idaho. I know that's kind of out of the Southwest, but just, I don't know, basically the Western United States is my favorite, hands down.
Heck yeah.
But I also, like, recently have been loving blue and green also. So Pacific Northwest is also really beautiful, and Yellowstone, and I could just go on and on and on about my favorite places.
What do you think it is about the Southwest that speaks to you so much?
I think it feels wild and more untouched than other places. And I think the beauty of nature is being untouched by humans and kind of having that synchronous, is that a word?
Synchronous, yeah.
Synchronous. Like communication of just respecting nature for what it is and understanding that you're a part of it. You're not the owner of it, basically. Like my thesis kind of spoke to that too. It was called To a Place Where Hand is in Everything. And I've thought more about that recently, and I want the human hand to be less.
Yeah, if we can learn to tread more lightly and even undo some of the trampling, that would be nice. So speaking of the desert, I wanted to talk more about the artist retreat that you mentioned that you just got back from. So what were your takeaways from it? What was it all about?
Last year, I embarked on this mentorship group with Krista Coons, but she's an amazing ceramicist who lives in Arizona. She's very inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe, who I also am inspired by. She was offering a 12-month mentorship program called Kiln Folk, and I decided to invest in it, and I spent all of last year doing like one-on-one conversations with her. She's a big reason why I decided to start my Patreon too, and gave me the confidence to do it. So we all have people in our team who give us the confidence to do the creative things we're hoping to do.
Totally.
She's amazing. We learned new art practices, and we learned marketing with heart and building community and everything. So she spoke a lot more than just creating and ceramics and everything. She also, like, a reason why I was really drawn to her was her emphasis on rest as an artist, because I am really bad at that. I'm not good at self-care, which I need to be much better at that because I'm really burned out right now. But anyways, it was an amazing year with her and I think 15 other artists. And to close off our year together, we went on a retreat down to the desert and did workshops. So like my friend Emily from Yucca Design and I taught a weaving workshop, which was so beautiful. And then we did a cyanotype workshop with Marissa Paul. She's a Canadian artist. And then we got to do clay workshop too with Krista. And we did our self-portraits out of clay. So it was really fun. Not like building our faces, but just whatever came to mind with what we could be in clay.
That is so cool. I did not know about that. You have to send me the one you did if you're cool with sharing
I will.
it.
I made this little wall hanging piece that said "When the Lionheart Calls" because I want to be more receptive to that this year because I'm all about, oh, everyone's a Lionheart. But I think like throughout my burnout and just like a lot of stress lately, I have kind of forgotten that in myself. So I was like, I just want to see that in my studio when I sit down and just be like, okay, what is the Lionheart calling me to create today? So that's what I made.
Yay. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. She's firing them for us, and we'll get them back in the mail in the next couple of weeks because ceramics is such a long process.
Fair.
But yeah, down there we also did meals together. So every night we had a family dinner, which was really beautiful. And I shared documentation of that over on my Instagram. So I can't find words to describe it because it was just perfect. But if you're curious, you can go look at pictures.
The Lionheart calling mantra is so powerful because I think it is easy to let just the sounds of the routine and stress and everything else kind of deafen you. So I think it is important to have that intentionality and to try to reconnect with that whole side of things. So I'm excited to see what comes of that. And I also love that you're able to find a creative mentor because I feel like it's really hard after you get out of school to find people who are willing to do that. I just think it's really neat that you were able to make that connection and have a year of growth and really intentional mentorship.
Yeah, it was incredible. And yeah, like I said, that she's like the whole reason why I had the courage to start my Patreon. I got so many different ideas at the retreat for new ways for us to like work together in it. And I'm still thinking about things, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And so you talk about the community aspect of things. Obviously, that's really important to you. What motivates you to make those communities?
I think it comes a lot from me as a kid, first of all, because I was so introverted and I don't want to say shy because I don't think I was shy. I was just also anxious. But I had my friends and everything. But as I've grown into an adult, I realized that I'm really prone to connecting with really interesting people. Like over the years, I've met so many artists and creatives, and I'm really good at finding them, which has just been so fun because I guess that's why like the creative conversations is such an important part for my Patreon. So those are basically just like one-on-one, kind of like a podcast, I guess.
I would say it's a podcast.
Okay, cool. But yeah, I think like me realizing how special it's been to connect with interesting people and then being like, oh, I think this person I know could get along well with this other person who lives in Oregon or something. And I'm like, how can I match make friends and community? And that's kind of what I do with my gift swap too. I don't know, it brings me a lot of joy.
I think it's great because it's basically harnessing the power of the internet for good, which it can be hard to find the good parts of the internet, but it's like such a bright spot to get to connect with all these different people through your Lionheart Canyon community. So that's what I really appreciate about it.
Thanks. I'm glad you are a part of it and get to be in that with me.
Thank you. And then it's also your community is visually represented in your collection of art at home, which is always so cool to see. Can you just go into the process of making decisions about how does it all go together?
So I I call myself a curated maximalist with my home decor and my art collection. In my living room, which I also use as my studio space. I'm looking at it right now. I like my goal is to kind of emulate Mrs. Weasley's house with it. So so I like above my TV, like my whole like two walls is just like covered in art. It's either art from friends or like a thrifted cool piece that I might find. And like one of the reasons why the luck for, or just the honor of having so many originals and prints from artists is that we do trades. So I love trading with people and people I meet at like art festivals. And I have invested in like several pieces too, because I also want to financially support my artist friends. But I love trading too. And I know that was so prevalent like ages ago. I'm like, why can't we do more of that? I think like a lot of my work leans towards like the desert, like nature colors, a lot of neutrals, but I'm also starting to interject color, which has been fun because I'm like, why don't we do a blue couch? You and I talked about before how our home is kind of like our terrarium, and I love that thought.
Yes.
Like building our safe space for ourselves where we can thrive and be inspired.
What does that mean to you to get to see all these different artists represented there?
I would say just really special, and like I said, like an honor to be surrounded by all of these creative people I know. It's like I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of the people whose works I have on my wall. It's just really inspiring to have their creativity in my studio. And it's kind of like Amy's sitting with me and she's painting or something. And it just feels like a hug because I live by myself with Sage.
I get that too, because I try not to own too many things, but when it comes to my art collection, you can feel all of the care that that person put into that work. And for me, it just imparts so much inspiration and beauty. That's one thing I'll never be able to minimize in my
Yeah,
in my possessions.
I get it. I get it. It's like being in a museum of your favorite things.
Totally. This is a inspiration to all the listeners to go and buy some local art now.
Yes. You know, I'm here for that. I know you're here for that. I endorse.
So you mentioned earlier of Georgia O'Keeffe being a huge influence on your work. And so what about her makes her such a huge figure for you?
I kind of just like want to be her, which sounds kind of weird, but she lived in the desert. Her life was really beautiful and not easy also. But Krista, my Kiln Folk mentor last year, sent me this big book of her paintings and her letters that she wrote to Alfred Stieglitz. I probably said his last name wrong, but that was her husband. And then she also shared the letters that she wrote to her friends. And I've started slowly reading those. It's something that I read as like a little treat because I just want to like indulge in it slowly because the things that people write to their friends and their lovers is so just intimate and special. So it's just been like really cool reading like her direct words to the people she loved. And I think that's a reason why I'm so inspired by her because she had such a beautiful community also of creative people.
Also, your ode to O'Keeffe's artwork, which is your weaving of Ghost Ranch, is just absolutely stunning. So I would love to hear how you went about translating that into fiber art.
A lot of the process with my weaving is very intuitive. So the color story really spoke to me. And a lot of the patterns I find that I end up weaving are reminiscent of the layers of the horizon that you might see and just like waves of sand and dirt and rock and everything. So I think using the combination of color and pattern, Krista made these beautiful ceramic beads, and the glaze that she used for those she special made as an ode to Georgia. So those pieces just really like tied the weaving together and made it feel so special.
That is amazing, because I knew that the beads were from Krista, but I didn't realize that Georgia O'Keeffe was also a huge influence for her. So to me, that's just really beautiful of like just all of this kinship together. How do you think you've grown as an artist since doing that experience? And also, what are you looking forward to in 2024?
A big part of it actually was realizing that cultivating creative community and maybe even leaning into mentorship is something that I am really curious about this year, and feeling the confidence to do it and trusting that I've done a lot of work as an artist and like developing not just like my work, but my voice and knowledge and everything. So I might embark on like one-on-one mentorship calls where we can talk about like a collection someone might be working on or something like that. So I'm curious about that, and also investing in my Patreon people. And I think like what I'm looking forward to about this year is playing more with creativity and just experimenting, because I feel like I haven't really done that in the last couple of years. So not that I need to throw in another medium because I'm very multidisciplinary, but I want to paint this year too.
Yay.
So, yeah.
That'll be so cool. Well, we've talked about the desert a lot, but you're an artist based in Omaha. And so I want to touch on that a little bit. So, what made you land in Nebraska, and what is it like being a part of the artist scene in Eastern Nebraska?
I grew up here. I was born in Arizona, but I spent most of my life in Omaha. And I moved away for a couple of years in my like early to mid 20s. Then the pandemic hit, and then I was very isolated in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. And that was not good for my mental health. But that's where I found Sage, Biscuit,
The bestest studio dog.
truly the love of my life. And I got to live in a beautiful canyon in Kansas. So I was in a beautiful space. It was very lonely. And a lot of my family and friends live in Omaha. So in 2021, I moved back here just to be closer to my people. And I've been here for a couple of years now. And I've managed to nestle into the creative community here, which when you think of Omaha, you might not think of it as like a thriving arts community, but it's really amazing. And I've met some fantastic makers and artists. And I just joined this, like, I think it's called Craft Day Club, but it's just really fun. Like, I went to my first one last weekend, and we just sat at Hot Shops, which is like a artist co-op in Omaha, and we all just like worked on stuff together, which was really cool. And I do a lot of artist markets and festivals, so the vendor life is a lot, but it's really fun. And I've met some really queer too.
Yeah, the art scene in Eastern Nebraska is surprisingly vibrant, and I'm selfishly happy that you're close so that I can come to the markets and see you and see Sage. Is there anything else you want to say about creative community or being an artist?
It can feel intimidating trying to find creative community because it's relatively easy to find community while you're in school, but then you go into your like adult life and you're like, how the heck do you make friends or meet people?
Right.
It's hard to like reach out to people, but that you just kind of have to do it. It's totally worth it. I don't know. I've just met so many incredible people over the years, and it's been really special.
The art community provides such a wonderful conduit for meeting amazing people. So that helps a lot.
Truly.
That leads us into the recurring ending segment. What is your current favorite thing?
Audiobooks.
Yes.
Which I don't know if like I'm late to that trend. I probably am, but I just started listening to books on Audible, which has been really cool because just my focus has just been really weird and off. And it's been hard for me to sit down and read, which is weird because I used to love to read, but I just find it hard to sit still right now. If I'm like listening to an audiobook while I'm working on something or driving or like washing the dishes, that's been really good for me. And I'm listening to The Creative Act by Rick Rubin right now, which I highly recommend.
That's awesome. Yeah, audiobooks have drastically lowered my road rage because it's like I'm driving home from work and, you know, the last thing you want to do is be stuck in traffic because that's detracting from the time you could be spending at home relaxing or doing chores. And so if I actually at least have like a fun story to engage with mentally, then I'm not as concerned about being in a stoplight or something. So
That's a good point. Maybe I'll have to try that because Omaha drivers are the worst.
yeah, it definitely has increased my tolerance for traffic, especially rush hour traffic. My favorite thing right now is a new beer by Cosmic Eye. I don't know if it'll still be available by the time this comes out because they always brew small batch, but it's called Indoor Cats. And the brewers made it as an ode to their cats, which is incredible. They've already brewed beers that are an ode to their dogs. So they're just like, covering all of their pets. But it's really good. So now you should come to Lincoln and have this beer with me.
Do they still have the dog one?
Yeah, they have Spooked by Shadows. And it has this really cute illustration of one of their dogs. I don't think that one's available right now, but they have that one's on rotation, so you might get to have that at some point. Thanks so much for joining for this conversation. It was super fun. Can't wait to see what you come out with in 2024.
Thanks for having me, and I can't wait to see who else you bring on for Nerdlandia.
The conversation with Kate inspired me to dive deeper into Georgia O'Keeffe's life, and not only was she a badass desert-dwelling artist, but she was also a queer icon with quite the spicy love life. What an amazing human. On that note, I'll leave you all with one of her most famous quotes. I decided that I wasn't going to spend my life doing what had already been done. Incredible. If you drew any inspiration from this discussion, or you just want to info dump about your collections, reach out on the socials or email nerdlandia.podcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Up next, Living the Veggie Life. Lauren, a freelance journalist and new mom, shares what it's like to be a vegetarian married to a diehard carnivore. I learn what food-related assignment she'd love to cover and get all her hot takes on vegan food trends in the first ever Nerdlandia Rapid Fire segment. Turn up for that episode on March 20th. Nerdlandia is hosted, produced, and edited by Emily Case Buskirk. Theme song and ending music by Keith West. Additional music by Vitaly Levkin. Cover art by Ellen Stubbings.